Today I'm going to do a quick review of the Ozefridge refrigeration system. This is for a Catalina 30 tall rig with the bowsprit, a 1986, that has an ice chest. I modified the ice chest from the stock. It originally had the big plastic piece you could buy, but I found it didn't seal very well on the side, so I put two pieces of R10 foam and then covered in duct tape and then put sealant all around it, just to make the cover a little more reliable. This is the interface for the Ozefridge right here. You can see the temperature at the moment. It's minus 3.6 on the cold plate. It has quite a few different options. What makes it kind of unique is it isn't always constantly running. If you look in here, there is a container that is filled with a combination of antifreeze and water. And depending whether this is a fridge or a freezer, they have you put a different ratio in. And it basically makes a great big block of ice. So what the system does when there's excess power is it freezes this big block of ice, and then once the block of ice is done freezing, the compressor shuts off, and then it keeps the fridge cold as the ice block slowly melts. The advantage of this is it can, when there's excess power in your boat, it can freeze the block, and then at night the compressor generally doesn't kick in. Where the actual compressor is can be in a number of places, but I put mine right behind the fuel tank. I just put some marine grade plywood, fiberglassed it, tabbed it in, and then screwed the unit down there just behind the fuel tank. And where I live in Canada, where it doesn't get super hot, 32, 35 degrees is about as warm as it gets. I'll put the American conversion. This is plenty of ventilation, especially where this has access to most of the underside of the boat. And then the electrical runs back to the electrical panel. And then you can see there is the pipe for the plate, which goes in behind. I just pulled this whole unit out, put it in behind there, drilled a hole through the ice box, and it connected just fine. We have about 200 watts of solar panel, and our batteries are essentially always full. Even on a cloudy day, it's enough to cool this down. One of my solar panels actually failed this year. We were just running on 100 watts for half the summer, and it did not have enough power to keep everything cool based on my setup. So what I had done while I was trying to troubleshoot that is I had added an extra Victron device which will regulate the amount of draw that the battery is allowed to use. So the way the Ozefridge works is you hook it up directly to your batteries. You still run it through the shunt. I have a Victron BMR and a Victron solar charge controller. You run the Ozefridge directly to the batteries through the shunt, not through your electrical here. So when you turn everything off, the fridge is still running, but I put this Victron protector that will shut it off at a certain voltage and let it turn back on at a certain voltage if the batteries get too low. The Ozefridge has that built in. It's just not adjustable, and when I had the one solar panel that wasn't working, it would let the batteries get lower than 50%, and I have lead acid. I didn't really like the idea of it getting lower. It would let it get to like 10 or 20%, and then it would shut off and wait for your batteries to charge. And I didn't really want it to go that low. So I got that Victron controller where I can set it so that once it gets to 50% battery life, it shuts the fridge off, if it ever does, waits for the batteries to charge back up, and then the fridge will kick in and refreeze the plate. Since I got my full 200 watts of electricity working, that hasn't been an issue at all. It's been staying plenty full. The people at Ozefridge will ask you for the dimensions of your freezer, your solar, and if you happen to have the logs, which I did with the Victron, they'll tell you if it will work and under what conditions, if you need more solar or if you've got enough solar to run the unit. And I didn't have any trouble. Once both solar panels are working, one wasn't enough. It wouldn't keep it up and running constantly. The reason we got this versus a traditional fridge unit is because we're on a mooring most of the time at a lake. with no access to shore power. And when we come on the boat, we want to be able to have a nice cold place to keep our food. We don't leave anything perishable when we're not on the boat. We just put drinks and things like that. We don't put meats or anything like that on the off chance that it was really cloudy for a long time and the fridge lost its cooling. So we would just transfer everything out in a little hand, or one of those little soft cloth cooler bags, put everything in here, and it's always been cold. We haven't had any trouble at all. So if you're in that situation where you don't have shore power to keep your fridge, and you want to have your boat on the hook and then come out every now and then, have a cold place to put your food, this works really, really well. And so far I highly recommend it. The only complaint I had is that it will run your batteries well below 50% before it detects and shuts itself off permanently and lets the fridge warm back up. So if you are a little shy on solar panels, or you have a bad run, something like this Victron controller, which I think was $100 Canadian, gives you just that extra peace of mind where you can adjust your comfort level and how much you want it to drain your batteries. So this is the solar charge controller that we use on the boat that has the Ozefridge refrigeration unit. And you can see that it's having no problem keeping the batteries charged up with the fridge unit running at all times. If we go back to when my solar panel was broken, these first two bars are when I replaced the broken solar panel. So I went from 100 watts to 200 watts. I guess it would be here 18 days ago. You can see my charges were very low. It was never quite keeping up. But as soon as I fixed the broken panel, or replaced the broken panel, so I was getting my full 200 watts, it started keeping the battery perfectly charged. And we're moving into getting closer to winter, not as much sun, and it's been having no trouble running the fridge constantly, or as constantly as it runs with the brick. And the nature of how it runs, which isn't constantly, it just freezes the brick and then the ice block, and then the ice block melts to a certain point and then it refreezes it, and it's been working just fine.